Hello, everyone, and inside the latest Locked On Canadiens, the injury bug strikes back yet again, and it's time for Hutson for Hobey, Part 2.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1035 of Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. We are, of course, your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week. I am, of course, one of your hosts. I am Scott Matlin. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, the active stick, Laura Saba, who has filled in with a fantastic group of guests while I was entertaining our chief marketing officer in town for the past couple days, eating our way through every chicken wing possible. Laura, thank you so much for covering that. Ian was great. Blaine was great. So many good episodes that you can get wherever you get your daily podcasts on Google, Apple, Spotify, or on youtube.com as well. Before we dive into things, how are we feeling heading into the end of the far West Coast trip here?
I would like to know why we cannot have nice things. I would like to know why every time we get happy about something, it gets injured.
Yeah, that's going to actually make me nervous for our second segment in this show here because it's something we're very happy about. If you have been living under a rock or you are not on the app formerly known as Twitter because you are smarter than the rest of us, today's news broke. I was in the middle of having lunch before I drove back through a snowstorm, and I kind of wish that I hadn't. Joshua Waugh out indefinitely. I did not get to catch all of the Oilers and Habs game the previous night, out to dinner doing work-related things, came home and fell right asleep before I could even get the game onto my iPad. Apparently, he blocked an Evan Bouchard shot, and that seems to be the culprit here. He was seen traveling with a splint on his hand, wrist, whatever you want to call it, and is traveling back to Montreal to get it looked at, which probably never a good sign that he didn't stay on the trip with the rest of his teammates. And I am hoping indefinitely just means they're sending him back to get it looked at. It's hopefully not as bad as it looks at, but this reeks to me like we're going to hear, hand surgery, out for the rest of the season, coming in the next 3 to 4 days.
Right. And that's something that makes me worried because I feel like he did everything he possibly could to make the NHL team. He was so great in Laval. And then he looked right at home on the NHL team, and he was giving everybody flashes of hope about the future. There were some growing pains, but I can't even remember them because that's how good he's been for the NHL team, for the Habs. So I just personally, I feel like, that's the kind of thing where hockey players are conditioned to do that. You sacrifice your body to keep the puck away from the net, to block a shot, whatever it is. And it's just unfortunate because for me, I think that it could have been a really high note, but not just that. They papered him down so that the Laval Rocket could use him in the event of a playoff push / playoff run.
Nope. Can't have that. Can't have. No, they did.
Oh,
We just can't have nice
I was like,
things.
what? I did my research, Scott.
Laura did her research, everybody.
Yes, but nope to the nice things. We can't have that. We cannot have nice things.
And the thing is that I was like, oh, Kirby Dach's on the trip, and he's in a non-contact jersey skating at practice with Christian Dvorak, who I thought wasn't going to even be remotely close coming in. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. And then somewhere out there, that monkey's paw that, governs Montreal Canadiens fandom curled one finger, and it's like, you got excited about something for a minute there, didn't you? And you're just going to take that away.
I got to ruin it. I got to ruin it.
And the thing is that line with Newhook and Armia has been very, very good. he's not getting a ton of points right now because no one on this Canadiens team outside of the top line is scoring currently, but he's doing all the things that lead to points as a rookie in the NHL who played, I think it was 32 AHL games before getting called up here. And this is not like Cole Caulfield playing 2 AHL games and then getting called up to the Canadiens and into the playoffs that year. This is just it's different gravy in that. And his rise up has been so quick. And it's a shame because he's the kind of guy that maybe, you move Caulfield or you move Slafkovsky around a little bit and you see why not try him in that spot there. Now we can't see that this season. And the bigger thing is, I don't know who replaces him in that role there.
Right.
I would say Alex Newhook, and then you have another center, but they don't have
any other centers.
You're not going
to
put.
That's yeah.
You're not. They don't. Martin St. Louis, and I'm sure he just passed along his instructions to Trevor Letowski on this, is that you're not going to see Jesse Oloinen in that spot. I think he would be just fine there. I wouldn't mind seeing Raphael Harvey-Pinard in that spot. He thrived in a top 6 role last year. And as I look at the Rocket, there's not a lot of pieces that I go, yeah, you can fill in Joshua Waugh's spot there. The likely thing that's going to happen is, and it's going to be Josh Anderson's getting promoted again, whether he does not, because there's not, and that feels mean. I'm not trying to bully the guy this time, but it just seems like that's the default option here. And the guy I wanted the Canadiens to call up to give a cup of coffee into the NHL is out with shoulder surgery. Xavier Simoneau is out for the rest of the season with shoulder surgery. And it's like,
why? What did we do?
Anything nice. I'm just, for a little bit, and Hattie Kalakash over at Locked On NHL Prospects put me onto what Xavier Simoneau does, that I want to see him in the lineup here. My thought is they should move Harvey-Pinard into that spot there. Let him play his everyman role there, but they're going to miss Joshua Waugh. I'm hoping that, hey, it's bruised or sprained. Give him, 2 weeks off, which I know is still a good chunk of the schedule, and he'll be good to go. But outside of that, even in the coming out of the NCAA, I don't think if Rhett Pitlick is coming, he's going to fill that role. I don't think Luke Tuck's going to fill that role. Lane Hutson's a defenseman, and we'll talk about him later. It's just another line of things that it's like, how many more devastating injuries can you have this season? You lost Newhook for a couple of months. You lost Pearson for a little while there, which hit or miss on how important that was to people. You lost you lost Kirby Dach for the entire season,
which was massive. That's a massive loss.
A game and a quarter, and it threw things into disarray. Christian Dvorak torn, I believe it was a pec, out for the season. Not having a great year, but still another center off the roster here. You lost Harvey-Pinard for a couple of weeks. The only people that haven't been injured, are redacted, and redacted. That it's hard to put a team together like that. And people look at it, it's like, the Canadiens have gone to overtime in 30 of their 62 points are from overtime games. They're doing this without most of a lineup that they're in 1-goal games a lot of the time. That if half of those go in the other direction, you're looking at the Montreal Canadiens as a team pushing for a playoff spot, not a lottery spot, which it blows my mind. I guess where we transition things, I know that Dach and Dvorak are non-contact jerseys. Both are ahead of schedule. That if we get into April and the doctor gives them the green light, do you want to see them in the lineup in this season, or do you want them to rest until we get into next year in the offseason or into the preseason next year and make sure they are actually fully 100% good to go?
I don't know if this is a hot take or not, Scott, but I wouldn't want to see them necessarily in the lineup because it's a season that's a wash, but I want to see them practice with the team. I want to see, a guy like Joshua Waugh, which unfortunately this isn't going to happen, but those guys practicing with somebody like Dach, particularly Dach, right? Like anybody that we were like, oh, he might have chemistry with him. Throw them on that line, like practice with those guys, like build some chemistry so that they can do their homework for next season. The only reason I wouldn't want them in the lineup is just like, for me, I'm like, I want to bubble wrap them. And Christian Dvorak, obviously, he's going to have to prove some stuff. But I still think that it's easier to err on the side of caution. Like if they were pushing for a playoff spot, I'd be like, go nuts.
And I think my thing is that I'm kind of like, I'm not against it, but it depends on if they get cleared and it's like a handful, like 2 games left, maybe not. But if they get cleared in,
And
let's
there's like
say,
5 or 6 games left.
yeah, I might actually be like, you know what?
Do it.
Run it out there. Put Newhook on the wing with Doc, like we saw earlier in the season. Move pieces around because, like you said, you can experiment. And that doesn't include the potential defensive piece coming in. It is Hobey Baker season in the NCAA, and we are back to start the Hutson for Hobey campaign for a second year in a row, and that's all coming up next. But first, as I said off the top of the show, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. It can be so hard buying tickets for events that you are looking for, sporting events, plays on in the theater, concerts, comedy shows. There's hidden fees. You don't always know what your seat's going to look like, and it's just hard to seek out what is a good value. On Game Time, all of that is in one place. You shouldn't have to worry about having to buy tickets for it because they have killer last minute deals, all in prices, the views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. There are no hidden fees in here. The price you see on those tickets is the price you are going to pay when you go to cash out there. And the best part is right now, when you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, just download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms will apply, but just create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and you will please ignore my typing in the background. I was bringing up something that we need for this next segment here. It is awards season in the NCAA. We are in conference tournament season. All the prospects who are not, whose teams have been eliminated, who aren't going to be making the Frozen Four, are slowly trickling out into amateur tryouts or signing their entry-level deals with NHL teams. The Canadiens will likely see some of those. There's a handful of players, Luke Tuck, Rek Pitlick, maybe Luke Middlestat, and the big one, Lane Hutson, where every assumption is that as soon as Boston's season is over, whenever that may be, Lane Hutson signing an entry-level deal and joining the Montreal Canadiens. When that happens, there will be an emergency podcast. One of us will do something for that. And yes, as you see for the show today, I am wearing my Boston Terriers jersey, the only Boston hockey jersey you will ever find me in. You will find me in Red Sox jerseys, drinking whiskey and cursing at John Henry this offseason. Sell the team, John. And that's a rant for another time. The biggest thing this year, it is Hobey Baker season. And last year, Laura and I started going with Hutson for Hobey, and then they put Matthew Nyes in there for some godforsaken reason. He didn't deserve it, and I still insist he didn't deserve it. The right guy won the award. It was Adam Fantilli. But Lane Hutson was snubbed of a nomination for that. This year, he is again among the 10 finalists. They will narrow this down to
3 people.
The final 3.
Okay.
Do you want me to
Who's this
run?
competition? Who's this competition?
Well, I just feel really old now because the first name on here is Jackson Blake, who plays forward for North Dakota, and it goes, his father, Jason Blake, and I went, nope, I am officially too old.
Nope.
Laura, we can't say anything. Yannick Perreault's son plays for the Laval Rocket.
I know.
Like, Saku Koivu's child is in this draft. Like,
I know.
It is Jack Devine, forward for Denver, Cutter Gauthier, the man who made Philadelphia collectively poop itself, Colin Graff, forward at Quinnipiac, Kyle McClellan, a goalie, Liam McClinsky from Holy Cross, Sam Morton, a forward from Minnesota State, Will Smith, friend of the Locked On Sharks podcast, Lane Hutson, the defenseman from Boston University, and the biggest threat to him, I believe, this year, forward Macklin Celebrini, the almost near consensus first overall pick, and his teammate at Boston University.
Yeah. So let's hope maybe he can get the second overall spot.
I think that there's a good chance he can make the final three here. This is the blurb from NHL.com where I'm taking all this from right now. 20-year-old sophomore selected by the Canadiens in the second round. Is first among NCAA defensemen with 1.33 points per game. A Hobey top 10 finalist last year. He is tied for first in the NCAA among defensemen, scoring with 44 points, 12 goals, 32 assists in 33 games. Named to first team Hockey East. Played a key role for the United States at the 2024 World Junior Championships. He is, and if I'm looking at this, I believe correctly, he is the only defenseman on this list, which automatically sets him apart. If I am picking here, I think between Smith, who leads the NCAA in points and assists as a freshman, Cutter Gauthier, and obviously Macklin Celebrini, I think are your big three. I think one of the two Boston College guys might get dropped off because they're both forwards playing on a very stacked team, and that might let Hutson in. I don't know if Lane Hutson's going to win the Hobey Baker this year. I'm hoping he makes the final three after kind of getting snubbed last year,
Right.
kind of like Cole Caulfield did, and then he went on to win the Hobey Baker the next season and then signed his entry-level deal. But it is kind of wild that Lane Hutson's had kind of an understated season because of how good
He was
Hockey
last
East
year.
has been and how good he was last year. And he's still one of the best defensemen in the NCAA. It absolutely blows my mind on that.
Yes.
How are we feeling going into the final stretch here? I want to say we're on Lane Hutson watch at this point.
Yes, we absolutely are. We were on Reinbacher watch. That panned out for us. With Lane Hutson, it seems to be kind of a done deal that he's going to sign his DLC, and then obviously he's going to end up burning a year of it, even if he plays for like 5 minutes. But I want to see him. I want to see him. I think it's worth it. I think it's really, for me, one of the things we talked about a lot last year was just how many points he was scoring, just how good he was. And we haven't focused on the physicality of his game because this year, and we will be talking to some draft experts, or sorry, prospect experts, not draft experts. Well, the same thing, scouts. We'll be talking prospect scouts, talking to prospect scouts. And one thing that he has done a lot is he's learned to kind of compensate for what he lacks in physical gifts. And so that's something that we are watching. And I feel like, this time last year, it felt a lot further away. This year, it feels like, okay, now it's time to see what he can do against NHL competition, right? Like we've seen what he does in college. And as you said, Hockey East has been, so stacked, so tough, like such a good, like all the names come out of there, right? And for him to play against the NHL competition that we're worried about and see, like, can he hold his own or will he get bullied? Is he going to be able to create that offense or be as creative or even half as creative in an NHL lineup? And, who's he going to play with, right? Obviously, Reinbacher right now is in Laval, but I want to see him playing with NHL teammates and pairing mates or whatever, and against NHL competition.
And I'm just kind of looking, I'm on Elite Prospects, our favorite place in the world with some of our favorite people. You have Lane Hutson, who is 18th overall in terms of total scoring for the entire NCAA. The people in front of him, you have Colin Graff, who is on that list. You have Cutter Gauthier, Jack Devine, Celebrini, Blake, and Smith, who are all also nominated just in front of him on that list there. He's in good competition. It is suddenly such a stacked group this year. It was a very good draft class. He's up against it, but at the same time, to be even able to kind of fit in there as well is a testament to how he keeps improving his game. And we saw this with other players that we know they have this asset in here, that, hey, they were really good at this. Can they improve on this? We saw it with Joshua White, put up a 100-point season. He had less points next year, but added so much more to his game, and that paid off. Arbor Jacki came in. He is the scariest dude in the OHL. He makes people drop the puck by staring at them, and then added offensive upside. He's gotten really good at improving the defensive side of things. Logan Mailloux, a lot of offensive talents. Can he work on the hockey IQ side of his game? And they keep improving on these things. And Lane Hutson's got everything up here. This kid reads the game at a level that I don't think I can comprehend. And just watching, I cannot wait to get to see him at prospect tournaments to put on that Canadiens jersey and just see what he can do. I'm
I can't
so
watch him. I can't wait to watch him like on an NHL lineup, like with Nick Suzuki's line.
and here's the thing is
Not as a forward. That's
well, I
everybody
mean,
calm down before you start talking about how I don't know anything
Laura
about
wants
hockey.
Lane Hutson to be Mark Streit. You can make that the headline when you put this on your clickbait website. Lane Hutson, Mark Streit? Question mark.
Absolutely not. I mean,
We're
starting
gonna
lineup.
radio you on this, Laura. But I look at that and it's like, Mike Madsen, love you to death, buddy. But I want to see Lane Hutson run a power play with Nick Suzuki,
There you
Slavkovsky, and
go.
Caulfield.
There you go.
There's so many opportunities. The NCAA tournament's not far off. Boston University, even if they don't win the Hockey East tournament, is basically a shoe-in for that to begin with. We will obviously keep you on Hudson Watch and Hudson for Hobey Watch because that is who we are. Ryan time is now over. Well, sort of. He is still playing with the Rocket potentially this
It's always Ryan
weekend.
time.
It's always Ryan time. We are gonna end the show here. We've got 2 games this weekend to talk about coming up, and we're gonna get into all that coming up next. But first, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die vehicle alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, you're not burning cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to United States customers. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and I'm also here to tell you, if you're tired of just watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, have to turn down the volume with everybody yelling on TV all the time, looking directly at you, redacted for legal reasons, make sure you switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Wherever you find your things on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. It's also on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, you get your team every single day of the week. We're going to wrap the show up here in a little bit. The West Coast trip is hard for both Laura and I because I travel a lot for work, and games that start at 10 p.m. Eastern time should be illegal on the East Coast because I said so, because I am a sleepy boy.
I'm just gonna admit I'm old.
I'm
I'm
not.
old. I can't stay up that late.
The hat's to cover the bald patch, so I keep pretending that I'm not aging at a rapid pace. But that's an existential crisis for another podcast. The Canadiens are playing the Vancouver Canucks the day you were listening to this on Thursday night. We are going to be doing just a mailbag before that show, just because by the time the game is over, we'd like to publish our episode right at midnight, the day that you expect it. We don't want that to be late. We want you to have the latest and greatest. We will have your recaps and 3 up and 3 down on Sunday. We just wanted to kind of look into the weekend ahead. They have the Canucks on Thursday, and they have the Kraken on Sunday night at 9 p.m. For some reason, I don't understand why.
Because they hate us.
Us in particular, just us two, because we
Yes.
have a daily podcast wherever you get your daily podcast. Locked On. Anyways, I don't feel so good about the Canucks game. And usually, even when the Canucks have been good, the Canadiens have been that weird team that they go in, and it's always an entertaining game, lots of goals. The Canadiens would usually win because Carey Price in British Columbia just doesn't lose. That's
Correct.
not a thing that he does. And then I remembered we don't have Carey Price anymore. Not that I don't dislike Samuel Montembeault or anything like that, but Carey Price in Western Canada, different player.
What is undefeatable? Undefeatable.
Something like that. It's so they play the Canucks, a team who are continuing to just shoot the lights out this season. They are overperforming all their metrics, but their fans seem to be having a lot of fun for the first time in 13 years at this point. It feels like they are all going to come crashing down in the playoffs, but that's none of my business. Without Joshua Waugh, I'm very concerned of how this lineup is going to handle the Canucks, who are just they score a lot of goals when they want to, but they also let in a lot of goals when they want to. I'm just trying to look up the Vancouver Canucks team here, their stats, because I want to see what their numbers look like. But it's
They're so much better than we think they are.
of course they are. Like every team, again, the NHL websites just don't want to load because this website is terrible. So there we
One day
go.
we're going to do a show about how bad the NHL infrastructure is.
Yeah, like the ESPN website loaded in one click. The NHL one just didn't. The team is led by JT Miller in points, 33 goals, 56 assists. Elias Pettersson, 82 points. Quinn Hughes, 79 points. Brock Besser, 66 points. Philip Hronik, 45 points. Connor Garland, 33 points. Elias Lindholm, 32 points. Nils Höglander, 31. Mikheyev, 28, etc. They're a team that has a good amount of depth into the bottom parts of their lineup there, that if one line isn't going on another night, you still have to contend with a bunch of other ones. They have a lot of just really talented players on this team. A guy like Connor Garland would immediately be a top 6 player in Montreal, and he's kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit. Same with Nils Höglander, who was allegedly on the trade block, but wasn't on the trade block, but is someone that I would take on this Canadiens team in a heartbeat. The Canucks legitimately kind of scare me, and they also have a very good goaltender in Thatcher Demko and former Montreal Canadian Casey DeSmith. So DeSmith not having a great year, 899 save percentage, but when you have Thatcher Demko, who has 34 wins on the season, who cares? A 917 save percentage, 2.47 goals against. No, I don't. ESPN for whatever reason doesn't list shutouts on here, so that's stupid. But they are a team that looks primed to really make some noise this year. They didn't spend a lot at the trade deadline, as far as I remember. Elias Lindholm was their trade piece,
Right.
but
And like
no,
the
go
one
ahead.
thing I do want to say is that they are kind of helped by a garbage conference. And so I like they're better than we think they are. My expectations for the game are pretty low, but at the same time, like I wouldn't put them on par with the Colorado, even if the point totals say different. If that makes sense. I don't know, Scott, am I making sense?
No, it's the thing about because I'm looking at Vancouver. They have 94 points. They lead the Western Conference, but Winnipeg and Colorado and Dallas are right there behind them. Edmonton's 8 points back. The Pacific's bad. You have the Ducks, you have the Canucks, you have the Kraken, who took a big step back this year. And Vancouver just got off to such a hot start that they could kind of coast on whatever it is for the rest of this season here a little bit. Like they're a dangerous team. And then that actually kind of brings me to the second part here. The Canadiens play the Kraken on Sunday, and the Habs have so far in Seattle's early existence here not played exciting or good games against the Kraken every single year, even if the Kraken are not good. Like I'm looking at their team this year, and it's a lot of guys who are underperforming where they were expecting them to be at. A guy like Matty Benier is taking a step back. Ellie Tolvanen's still been decent, but he wasn't shooting the lights out like he was last year. Jared McCann's kind of carrying the weight here a little bit. They're a team that hasn't been able to hit their stride. They've been rotating through goalies. Chris Treager's played a few games, but Joey Decord, who his name means okay in French, is putting up a 917 on the season, but their main guy, Philip Grubauer's under a 900. I am hoping that this trip ends kind of like the one in Florida did, where maybe they don't beat the Canucks, but going to overtime against the Oilers was a good showing. The Oilers are a
Yeah.
good team. If
Especially
you
since
can,
like the Oilers had the lead and the Canadians were able to catch up. Sorry, the recap for that is the previous episode.
yes, and then like against Vancouver, if you can play a strong game, I'm not worried about the final outcome. If you go out there and you just lay down, give up 27 first period shots and lose 5-1, okay, that sucked. If you go out there and you put in a hard fought effort and you lose 4-2, 5-3, something like that, where you put in the effort, fine. Seattle is a team that's going to tell us, okay, where are we actually at this point in the season? You hear guys talk about we're frustrated, we're doing the right things. You do the right things against Seattle, you have more of a chance of winning. Vancouver is just so powerful as an offensive team, they might just overwhelm you and ignore kind of all that. It's like an overpowered video game character. Yeah, you built everything perfectly for this, but I'm much stronger than you. Bonk, I win kind of thing. If they can split the weekend, I'm happy, depending on how it goes. I know people want this team to lose. I do. I also want this team to get rewarded for doing so many things well in recent games. It hasn't always been pretty. And yeah, there's bad officiating and some things are ugly, but I want to see this team kind of get rewarded for doing the right things in this weekend series. I think they're going to split potentially. They might lose both. They're probably likely going to because they don't play well in Seattle. We will have those recaps and 3 up and 3 down for you next week. Friday, we are doing the mailbag. Tweet us your mailbag questions at LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. We are going to record that before the Canucks game just because we want to make sure we have something for you that neither of us falls asleep and misses the game on Thursday night because it is a late start. We will have all of that for you. Tweet us your questions. We will have a great show for you then. You can follow Laura on Twitter at The Active Stick. You can follow myself at Scott Matla. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.